Welcome to another episode of Supernatural First Watch Podcast, a rewatch podcast designed to be spoiler-free and enjoyed as if it's your first watch. I'm your host, Kimberly, self-proclaimed sci-fi and fantasy nerd. Previously on Supernatural, we had Dead in the Water, in which the brothers encountered some sort of spirit in the water in a lake in Wisconsin, and were able to not kill it, not get rid of it, but have a nice little conversation and help out a kid and his single mom. Now, let's dive into Phantom Travelers. Like always, we have a cold open in which it looks like a tropical paradise, but wait, it's simply an advertisement in an airport, and one very, very nervous flyer who's going to the bathroom to try and calm himself down before flying. Another guy shares with him that, hey, you shouldn't be afraid of airlines and you shouldn't be afraid of plane crashes because what are the odds? Anyone who says you shouldn't be afraid of somebody who has a fear or phobia, which by its definition is not logical, probably needs to walk away. I always love when they show these types of scenes because yes, of course it's not logical that I am afraid of whatever, but telling me that it's not likely is not actually going to help, I find. While the guy is splashing his face with water, trying to calm down, we find out he really does have something to be afraid of, but we're not sure what it is because something black is floating in the air and it possesses him through his eyes and turns them black momentarily. Cut to him getting on the plane, and of course he's no longer nervous because he's probably no longer in control. The flight attendant notices something off about his eyes, but shrugs it off because there are all kinds of people in the world and directs him to his seat. At 40 minutes into the flight, not to be confused with the 47 often seen in Star Trek and other science fiction shows, he asks the passenger what the time is. Then, of course, puts out a pun, time really does fly, before getting up, heading to the emergency exit, where a kid right by the emergency exit notices him and watches him open the emergency exit in flight, which of course causes the plane to crash. It goes into a dive, everyone's screaming and panicking, and the next morning, we see it's super early, and Dean is awakened by Sam, who for some reason isn't sleeping. Doesn't really share why, but he's having nightmares and having trouble sleeping. Dean, of course, says you can't take it home with you. And my first thought with that was, well, they don't have a home, or do they? But they can't carry it with you. You can't keep it with you. To which Sam reaches under the pillow and pulls out the knife Dean was holding. And Dean says that's not fear, that's being prepared. A nice reframe, if you ask me. Then, of course, their conversation is interrupted by a phone call, somebody who has been helped in the past by Dean and his dad asking for help again. They meet up with the guy, Jerry, who apparently used to have a poltergeist problem in his home, and he plays them the voice recorder of a downed airline, and they all hear a really bad noise. Of course, that noise also sounds like what we heard before, which was the EVP from the pilot episode saying, hey, signpost, this is something spooky. Jerry also shares he doesn't think the plane went down from mechanical failure, and somehow there were 7 people who lived through the plane crash. We find out later that one of those 7 people was the kid who saw the guy open the door, but if you ask me, the likelihood of anybody surviving a plane crash is pretty low. The likelihood of the guy immediately across from the airport door that was about to lose pressure is really frickin' low. But that's my thought and opinion. Before they can go and start exploring, because their friend Jerry can't actually get them access to the plane or anything that the NTSB has control over, Dean heads to a copy shop where he's easily able to make some fake security IDs. Sam is listening into the voice recorder, and it's clear that he can hear the phrase, no survivors. So first up, they go and do their rounds of visiting their survivors and start with the guy who saw the man try and open the plane door. As I said, my thought on him actually living is not very high, but we'll continue with the story. The survivor is not okay. How do we know? Because he's checked himself into a psych ward, which means he probably saw something. He shares with them that it was very weird because he saw the guy open the door, and he looked it up later and saw it had 2 tons of pressure, so clearly he must have imagined it. He probably imagined the black eyes too. It's very intriguing, the back and forth that we see here to get him to tell what he does not want to tell. Then, of course, they go and visit the guy who actually opened the door, his widow, to find out if anything strange was going on. The strangest thing she can come up with about her husband is that occasionally he had acid reflux, which, not very strange, and also why on earth would that be the first thing to pop into your head if a group of people claiming to be some sort of law enforcement are asking for something strange about your husband? Then they decide, well, that's all they can get from the survivors right now. Who needs to go talk to the other 5, I guess? And they head out to the wreckage. But before they do, they decide to actually try and play the part. If they're going to be federal law enforcement, they should probably not show up in their leather jackets and jeans. So we see them exiting the store in suits and a fun Blues Brothers callback. While visiting the plane, they go to the emergency door that they were told about. And of course, there's some sort of substance on the handle. Again, my thoughts on the fact that that was found and as a single standalone piece did not go up in flames while re-entering the atmosphere, I don't know. But they're able to scrape something from the door and take it back to their buddy Jerry. And of course, they find out it's sulfur. What does that mean? Well, we're definitely dealing with demonic possession. Good to know. Meanwhile, Jerry's friend Chuck Lambert is trying to get back on the horse and decides to take up a plane with a friend so that he can get over his fear. But of course, we know that's not going to happen because Chuck encounters the floating black mass as well. It goes in his eyes, and 40 minutes into his flight, he crashes the plane near Nazareth. Talk about biblical callback. While at the hotel, Sam and Dean are looking up things about demons and possessions on their laptop because I guess their father doesn't have much information about it. They mention a couple of other supernatural baddies and are trying to figure out what's going on when they're told that Jerry's friend Chuck has crashed a plane. And while they almost got caught inspecting the plane pieces in a warehouse guarded by the NTSB, somehow they are able to get a hold of the wreckage of this plane in the middle of nowhere and find out that yes, there is more sulfur, and yes, it crashed 40 minutes into the plane. Sam does his due diligence and contacts the rest of the survivors to make sure that they don't plan to fly anytime soon, and of course they really don't, except of course for the flight attendant who's going back to work. At the airport, they're trying to get a hold of Amanda to keep her off that plane. I'm guessing that no survivors means no survivors as long as they're in the air, but probably she can't get into a car crash, I guess. They're assuming that no survivors means that when they fly, they can't survive the encounter. So, they get to the airport and try one of the oldest tricks in the book to impersonate a family member is in danger. Of course, their luck being what it is, the family member literally just talked to the flight attendant, to which she asks if it's clearly an ex-boyfriend. And Dean, as we have seen so far, where people he's talking to fill in the blanks, he's decided, yep, that's me, and goes with it, claiming it's a prank. And even though this prank involved telling her that a beloved family member was in the hospital, she says, oh, you know what, I'm willing to talk to this guy again as long as I get off my shift first. Not really sure what that says about her mental state, but she seems both calm and also a little bit chancy. Well, they're not going to get her off that plane. I guess they have to get on the plane. And surprise, big macho Dean, who doesn't seem to be fazed by anything and tells Sam to leave the past encounters at the door, is actually afraid to fly. which is intriguing and a great question answered because, as I mentioned, so far, just from California to the Dead in the Water episode so far, the boys have traveled at least 35 hours by car. So it is very intriguing to know that the reason they drive everywhere, even if there is an imminent threat and they want to get there faster, is because Dean's afraid to fly. So they get on the plane, they decide they're going to make it happen, and Dean is completely freaking out. Fun fact, apparently demons can use emotional turmoil to make you open for demonic possession. And while he's trying to calm Dean down, Sam shares that the exorcism is 2 parts. First, you have to make the demon leave the body, but it also makes it more powerful and able to survive and control things without a human host. I'm not entirely sure why on earth that would be useful, helpful, or a good way to get rid of a spirit. And then they have to read out the second half, which banishes the demon back to hell. Dean really doesn't like the idea of this, but decides to use his Walkman EMF detector, which he's very proud of, to check out the passengers, but finds nothing. They've only got 15 minutes left. And my first thought, of course, as well, just being a person who actually flies frequently, is that nobody chastised them for getting up and walking within the first 20 minutes of the flight before the drinks cart had even been deployed. Usually, it's all about stay on your seats, please don't get up, if at all possible. But this is television. So, they have 15 minutes, they're not getting anywhere, but the EMF apparently has a really great range and is able to pick up a signal through the reinforced cockpit doors, so obviously it's a co-pilot. They manage to sweet talk the flight attendant, even though she's pretty sure something weird is up, into getting her help. Even though she's freaked out, she also knows something was weird about that flight and has already had a conversation with Dean, so she's open to it. And she's able somehow to get the co-pilot into the back section of the plane, where they proceed to throw holy water on him, and he sizzles and screams, and absolutely nobody looks back to the back of the plane, because I guess it's just that loud. But they don't really draw attention while they try and perform the exorcism. Of course, they have to do some fighting and grappling, and there's a whole bunch of smoke mirrors and really painful looking skin, but in the end, they're able to get the creature out of the co-pilot, and then it, of course, possesses the plane and decides to take it into a dive. Now, I am not at all surprised by this because, of course, he said no survivors on the recording. So if you're going to make it so the demon doesn't need a host, obviously you can just take the shortcut and crash the plane itself. But they're able to finish the exorcism, the plane is stabilized, and it's unclear if they circle back to their original destination or if they go to their final destination. Because at the end, we see a lot of people being questioned by police, a lot of people being carted off to ambulances, but then in my mind I'm like, wait, if they're able to head for the car, I guess they just turned around. Amanda mouths her thank you, and they walk away. Sam is really bothered because while wrangling with the demon, it said something about Jess and her death. Of course, we all know the bad guy will say anything to not be killed, but Sam is freaked out, and Dean tries to say that he probably knew his fears and that it was most likely lying. Outside, Jerry thanks them for all that they have done, and Dean realizes that he never gave Jerry his number, so he's very curious as to how on earth they knew to get a hold of him. Fun fact, even though they've tried their father's cell phone in numerous times, apparently it has been a few days because he's turned it back on and changed the voicemail message. He's still not answering, but he says that, hey, he's unavailable. If you need help, call his son Dean. He can give you help. Obviously, this means most likely their dad was alive in recent memory, but he hasn't contacted them, and they're not sure what to do next. So that is what happens in our Phantom Traveler episode, and let's talk about local legends. Again, no real local legend in this one is going on, but Dean does mention a couple of other options about why the plane might have crashed before we get the actual answer, which is demonic possession, and that includes a disaster demon, a poltergeist, or a primordial entity of some kind. But pretty quickly, they realize that it is demonic possession, and they know exactly what to do. Who are we this week? Dean and Sam this week impersonate Homeland Security officers with a very great line that actually shows its age. Dean says, yeah, it's something new, it's something different, it's a surprise, people haven't seen it before, to which my thought immediately went to, yeah, but if you were filming this today, everyone is Homeland Security in cop shows nowadays, and of course in general, so it wouldn't be a surprise. But they put paid to Dean's observations that it was new and different, because not even 10 minutes after they get in using their Homeland Security badges, Homeland Security for real shows up. Now, I'm very intrigued by this because, again, what are the odds that this crash that they have said happened over 2 months ago is going to be visited by Homeland Security as soon as they decide to impersonate Homeland Security? And apparently all you need to impersonate a Homeland Security is a badge made at your local copy shop and secondhand suits that do really make you look like the Blues Brothers, in my opinion. How do we kill it? Well, the demonic possession does not require killing the host, which is nice to know. But it does require you to perform an exorcism, which requires holy water and a very long and very wordy in Latin exorcism spell. And of course, because Sam went to Stanford, he's the one who gets to read out the Latin. Also, around the how to kill it, fun fact to know that demons can possess you when you have some sort of chink in the armor. For example, when you're nervous or anxious or have some sort of emotional turmoil going on. So, even though you're afraid of flying, apparently taking a deep breath is enough to make sure the demon doesn't want to jump bodies, which I find very intriguing. I would also love to know what else can open you to demonic possession. So, the body count for this episode, as we said on screen, includes killing the original passenger, George, killing over 100 people on the flight, also killing the pilot and his buddy, which means that our grand total is 3 plus the 100 passengers. You've seen them before. Their buddy Jerry reunites Brian Markinson with Jensen Ackles, the actor who plays Dean, because they both were on Dark Angel, also filmed in Vancouver. Brian Markinson played a recurring character as a doctor, and Jensen Ackles did a one-shot in the first season and came back as a different character, but a clone of that first character for all of the second season run. I do not recall if they actually shared any scenes together, but Brian Markinson can also be seen in a variety of science fiction shows, all filmed in Vancouver. So, this episode, I think, is a very nice break from the regular Monster of the Week. It's still very much a Monster of the Week format, but something feels different about it. It plays a little bit of homage to the ongoing story about where in the world is Dad, but also, I find, the story is not nearly as tropey. While there are instances of different pieces that we might have seen in horror films before, like the floating mist, the story itself, something about it just felt like a nice change from what we saw in Wendigo and Dead in the Water. Again, it is very much a Monster of the Week, but it plays into the overall story arc of where is Dad, what's going on, and dives a little bit deeper into who Dean and Sam are as their own unique selves and not just as demon hunters or as hunters, sorry. But also, I do find it very fun. Just the entire intrigue behind it. A plane crash, again, not something you would usually investigate. Sam in the previous episode said something along the lines of, well, people drown in lakes. Is that really something for us to investigate? So it's very interesting to know how do they find their cases and what about their cases stood out enough for them to realize maybe it was supernatural. Also, it begs the question, do they ever find cases that they think are supernatural and it ends up that it is not supernatural? And then what happens then? I think that would be really interesting to see. But overall, a really solid episode. I think it's much stronger than the second and third ones out of the gate. And I really do like that it ties into, Sam's not sleeping, what's going on there, a little bit more about the relationship between the two brothers and about their search for their father. So, technology in the new age. Dean has a Walkman, and it's a cassette Walkman, which is very intriguing. As I read in a previous episode, the iPod Mini had just premiered in 2005. So while people could get their stuff on MP3, plenty of people were still using CDs, or like Dean is shown in his car, he has got a cassette deck and a cassette Walkman as well. I actually had a cassette Walkman that I used in the early 2000s, and I also had a CD Walkman as well. So on first thought, you're like, wait, really? Why is he using such old technology? And then when you take a moment and think about it, I, as a teenager in 2005, was actually using a Walkman myself. So I found that really funny and really interesting. Also, technology in the new age are really just what are the instances of dating the show. It's very clear that Homeland Security, which was established in the United States after 2001, is still not as prevalent of a law enforcement presence in television as it has become in the year 2025. Partially because Dean says something along the lines of, well, it's something new. They haven't seen it before, so it'll let us get in, even though the NTSB has control over crashed planes. And I'm not sure how Homeland Security plays into that, but clearly it plays into it enough that Homeland Security actually goes to check out the wreckage for real. So who knows? But that is also another sign of the times, if you will. And one of the things that I found to be most incongruous and completely different were two parts of the airplane scene. Number one was the idea that only 30 minutes before the flight, not only were they randomly able to call a flight attendant on the courtesy phone, something I'm not even sure exists in airports anymore, and certainly not something that a random person that's not a member of the airline staff could necessarily use to call a flight attendant, but only 30 minutes before the flight is due to leave, they are able to buy a ticket, make it through security, and get all the way to the gate in less than 30 minutes. Unless this is the smallest and least secure airport in the entirety of the country, 30 minutes is never enough time, and I'm not even sure if you'd be able to buy a ticket with less than 30 minutes left, especially since they usually recommend that you be at the gate no less than 30 minutes beforehand, and they stopped dropping bags at an hour. But that was one thing I found also that kind of points to maybe it is 2005 instead of 2025 airports, the idea that you could get a ticket that quickly and still be able to make it through security. Maybe it's faster then. Also, one thing I noticed, I'm a big fan of IMDb and was reading the goofs and trivia items there, and somebody mentions that Dean would never be able to get a packet of holy water that big through security. Fun fact, actually, he would have in 2005 because the liquid restrictions of 3.4 fluid ounces were not introduced until 2000, well past 2006. I remember this because I actually flew international, in which they lost my luggage and I was gone for a month. And I actually had full-size toiletries of everything and all of my medication in my carry-on, so I didn't have to go and replace them because at the time there were no liquid restrictions. So in 2005, you actually could have brought a bag of water that big onto a plane. Fun facts. I do believe it was just a couple months later in which they instituted that rule. So Dean actually could have gotten that through security, no problem. But I did love the call out from Sam that, hey, whatever you can get through security, you need to go grab from the car. Again, implying that the car is actually parked close enough to the airport they can run out, grab their stuff, get back in, buy a ticket, and make it to the gate and through security in less than 30 minutes. I find this to be one of the most implausible pieces of every episode I have seen of Supernatural so far. But it's also very interesting to observe. Moving on to Dean and Sam's relationship. This is a really great character building episode, I find. Sam kind of gets a peek of what Dean has been up to all of this time. They haven't spoken in at least 2 years. He's been away at college, and Dean has been actively hunting with their father because Jerry is calling them because they already knew about the supernatural and remembers Dean and knew enough to call Dean's dad for help based off of very little information. And this is kind of what Dean's life has looked like. Also, a really great conversation, as mentioned at the beginning, with Sam not sleeping well. He's up really early. He's not sleeping at night. Dean does sleep with a knife or some sort of weapon under his pillow for protection because, again, he's lived this hunter lifestyle for what is very clear to have been a good portion of his adult life, but we don't know how long that has been. But also, the conversation they have where Dean clearly cares about his brother. He's worried about him. He's trying to comfort him. He's trying to provide some guidance. And honestly, in another show would be fatherly advice, which I think hints at what kind of relationship Dean and Sam had growing up, because he's trying to guide him through navigating his emotions without actually saying, let's sit down and talk about our emotions. So I find this is a really great episode to kind of establish the communication and the relationship between the two brothers really, really clearly. Also, I do like that they finally go and get suits. It's a running joke for a lot of cop shows that you can spot the law enforcement by what they're wearing. And specific types are for FBI, specific types are for, federal general law enforcement, specific types are for other places. But one of the things, not only do in that pilot, does the police officer question if they could possibly be U.S. Marshals because he thinks they're too young, but especially with the way they are dressed. So I like that they've gone and gotten suits, especially if they're going to impersonate somebody from like Homeland Security. Clearly, Sam has no issue with forging the IDs because he wants to help these people. That's not a concern, but I guess he's still concerned about as he phrased it, right? That's highly illegal even for us. So there's levels of illegality that Sam is comfortable with to not comfortable with, which I find very intriguing as well. And again, Sam then tries to comfort his big brother and is really shocked to find out that Dean is afraid of flying. So that also brings up the question of, did they fly as kids? And when would Sam have had the opportunity to fly versus not? Because clearly Dean doesn't fly, and it didn't really occur to Sam that would be weird, that was strange, that they're driving all over the United States, and sometimes what I would feel is probably very long distances, and it never occurs to him that, we could have flown and gotten there faster. It might be just a connection to the car, because there is that back and forth we've seen so far about who gets to drive and what kind of music do you listen to. But Sam is shocked to find out that Dean is afraid of flying, but then also says, hey, I'll go by myself then. And Dean, of course, wants to protect his little brother and says, no, I'll go with you. He'll get over it somehow. And Sam is that calming influence on the plane, trying to calm him down with practicality and with the reality of what they do for a living, which is that if there is a demon, you don't want to open yourself up to possession and be all over the place. So Sam tries to calm his brother down. So I think it's a really great deep dive, especially for only 4 episodes into the relationship between the two brothers. They try and comfort each other. They try and support each other. But also they do clash a bit because, again, their father has directed them to take up this job. So moving on to our Daddy Knows Best segment. Clearly, they've been trying to get a hold of their dad for, it sounds like, for months now. And they've had absolutely no luck, and they've called his number a ton of times. But now, not only does the number work again, but he's changed it to automatically pick up a voicemail, which says, "Hey, I can't help you. If you need help, contact my son. Here's his number." Also, a fun fact that Dean apparently changes his cell phone number frequently because he's only had the number for 6 months, which makes me think most likely he got that number shortly before his father and he parted ways. Because again, the timeline for me at least is not really clear as to how long it's been since Dean went searching for their dad and enlisted Sam's help. Also in Daddy Knows Best, clearly he's very proud of his sons, not that they would know it. Apparently Jerry shares that his father would always talk about Sam. But what I find very interesting is this seems like news to Dean as well. So when was their father talking about how proud he was of his son who is at Stanford, despite the fact that they haven't spoken in years? And it's a surprise to Dean to know that he's been talking so well about one of his sons as well. It makes me wonder, what kind of relationship do Sam and Dean have? Dean clearly is willing and able to follow wherever his father points them to go. He views the fact that the journal has been left in their possession as kind of passing of the torch and a clear indication that their father expects them to keep hunting and to carry on the family business. As we see in the previously on segment, that piece about, carrying on the family business. But I do find it intriguing that both of the sons are surprised to hear that the father thinks positively of them. You can tell just kind of in their interactions, they're like, "Oh, he's proud of me. Wait, how do you know this?" It's kind of a surprise. So clearly their father is proud of them and who they are, but has not shared that with his sons. And yet, Dean especially is willing to follow their father's instructions to the letter, no questions asked. Because they are still hunting. So, of course, they pick up the phone, give a call to Dad, but again, who knows where they're going to go next, because there is no indication as to where they're going to head next, but they're about to hit the road again. So that is kind of a wrap-up on Phantom Travelers. I personally really do enjoy this episode. I'd rank it much higher. I hadn't thought about giving rankings to each of these episodes, but I'd probably give it an 8.5 out of 10. It's, I think, a solid standalone episode. It is a one-off, I feel. However, it does feel very different to the previous 2. They felt kind of like they were mirroring pretty much everything you would expect to see in a horror film for me. So I was a bit not thrown off, but kind of like, wow, it's another trope, it's another trope, it's another trope. I know exactly what's going to happen. And while there were tropes in this episode, and there, I don't think there was too much surprise going on in the episode, it was very interesting, I found. With the setup, with the conversations, the guest stars felt really solid. It was just a lot of fun, essentially, in a lot of different ways for this episode. And I think that the show's about to hit its stride. It's not going to be completely, let's just see a softer horror version. It's not going to be completely deep diving, but I'm intrigued to see, the relationship between the brothers grow and, get to know more about their family dynamic, and also, what other types of supernatural creatures are they going to come across? Because I know there are 15 seasons of this show. So far, Wendigo I had heard of, Creature in the Lake, it's a popular trope. demonic possession and plane crashes. Again, a popular trope, especially in the first season of a sci-fi or fantasy show. So I'm intrigued to see what happens next, but I did find it to be a little bit of a fun twist. So that's a wrap on Phantom Travelers, and we'll connect on the road again soon in Bloody Mary. Thanks for listening to the Supernatural First Watch Rewatch podcast.